Russian President Vladimir Putin stands before the cameras, his posture unwavering, as he insists that Western sanctions have failed to make any real impact on Russia. With a calm and assertive tone, he reassures the world, and his own people, that Russia remains unshaken by outside pressure. He claims that Russia's economy is not only strong, but also united and resilient, painting a picture of a nation immune to the economic weapons of the West. According to Putin, the country's financial system is robust, and the people are standing together in defiance. State-controlled media amplifies this message daily, projecting an image of unwavering resilience and total control. News anchors repeat the narrative that Russia is weathering the storm, and that the government's strategy is working flawlessly. Putin points to new trade deals with countries outside the West and highlights selective economic statistics, arguing that the West has lost its leverage and can no longer dictate Russia's fate. He emphasizes partnerships with China, India, and other non-Western nations as proof of Russia's adaptability. The official narrative is clear. Russia is not only surviving, but winning the economic war, just as it plans to win the military one. Parades and celebrations reinforce this message of strength and victory. But behind the confident speeches and orchestrated displays, a different reality is quietly emerging. Across the country, factories are shutting down, production lines are stalling, and prices for everyday goods are steadily rising. Inside government offices, officials are growing increasingly anxious, holding tense meetings as they grapple with mounting economic challenges and public discontent. The so-called economic fortress that Putin boasts about is showing cracks that are widening with each passing month, threatening the stability he promises. The contrast between Putin's confident words and the harsh reality faced by ordinary Russians is becoming increasingly stark and difficult to ignore. Russia now faces serious headwinds, especially in its vital oil industry, which has long been the backbone of the nation's economy. Sanctions haven't caused a sudden collapse, but they're acting as a slow-acting poison, gradually eroding Russia's economic strength and future prospects. Understanding the true story of Russia's economic struggle is crucial to grasping its future role in the Ukraine conflict and the choices its leaders will make. The tale of two Russias, one carefully crafted for television, the other lived by millions, is becoming impossible to ignore, as the gap between propaganda and reality grows wider every day. The war reached Russia in a new and unexpected way, not with columns of tanks or the thunder of artillery, but with swarms of Ukrainian drones flying low and fast, targeting the very heart of Russia's energy infrastructure, its oil refineries. The Ryazan refinery, a massive and strategically vital facility just outside Moscow, was struck in a dramatic attack and forced to shut down operations. This was not an isolated incident. It was part of a coordinated campaign. Over a dozen major refineries across Russia were hit in quick succession, sending shockwaves through the country's energy sector. The attacks crippled Russia's ability to produce essential fuels like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, disrupting both civilian life and military logistics. Suddenly, even as one of the world's top oil producers, Russia faced the real threat of fuel shortages at home. Long lines formed at gas stations, and panic began to spread among ordinary citizens. The government scrambled to respond, imposing a 6-month ban on gasoline exports in a desperate attempt to protect domestic supply and calm the growing unrest. Experts estimated that about 14% of Russia's total refining capacity was knocked out almost overnight, a staggering blow to the nation's economy and energy security. The attacks exposed a major vulnerability. Russia's vast territory, once seen as a protective shield, was now nearly impossible to defend against modern, agile drones that could strike anywhere, anytime. The damage was immediate and severe, with real fires, real destruction, and real shutdowns that could not be ignored or easily repaired. For the first time, the economic consequences of war were not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were visible, tangible, and deeply felt inside Russia's borders. The Kremlin struggled to control the narrative. The crisis was too obvious, too widespread, and too immediate to hide from the public or the world. The economic war was no longer a distant threat. It was now burning at the very heart of Russia's power, casting a shadow over Moscow itself. For President Putin, this was more than just a military setback. He now faced a domestic crisis that directly challenged his narrative of strength and invulnerability, forcing the Kremlin to confront a new and dangerous front in the ongoing conflict. With refineries offline, Russia pivoted to exporting more crude oil instead of refined products. The plan shipped millions of barrels to buyers in Asia, especially India and China. But crude oil sells for less, so Russia needed to export more, just to break even. This required a shadow fleet of aging, poorly insured tankers, dodging Western oversight. For a while, the strategy worked. India and China bought discounted oil, and high global prices helped. But this made Russia dependent on fewer buyers, who demanded bigger discounts. The oil trade became more visible and vulnerable to new sanctions. Every tanker was a potential target for Western measures. Selling crude was a short-term fix, not a sustainable solution. Russia's gamble was about to face even tougher odds. The US responded with smarter, targeted sanctions, not banning Russian oil, but blacklisting ships and companies moving it. Tankers in Russia's shadow fleet became international pariahs, struggling to get insurance or find ports. Some ships were stranded at sea, unable to unload. Shipping costs soared, and buyers like India's state refineries stopped accepting oil from sanctioned Russian tankers. Russia was forced to offer even deeper discounts, earning far less per barrel. The price gap between Russian and global oil widened sharply. The American squeeze was working, making oil exports more difficult and less profitable. Oil money is the lifeblood of the Russian state, and the flow was weakening. The Kremlin's ability to fund the war and maintain stability was under threat. Sanctions were now a direct hit on Russia's bottom line. The pressure was no longer distant, it was immediate and severe. As Russia struggled, OPEC+, led by Saudi Arabia, made a surprise move, increasing oil production. For months, low production had kept prices high, helping Russia offset discounts. Now, more oil flooded the market, and global prices fell. For most countries, this meant cheaper fuel. For Russia, it was a disaster. The combination of falling prices and forced discounts was devastating. Russia's influence in OPEC+ waned. Saudi Arabia prioritized its own interests. Buyers like India and China now had more options and demanded better terms. Russia lost leverage, forced to compete in a market awash with oil. Every dollar drop in oil prices meant billions lost for Moscow. The OPEC+ move wasn't a sanction, but it squeezed Russia's main income source at its weakest moment. Putin's economic lifeline was slipping away. For years, Russian state media echoed Putin's optimism about the economy, but as problems mounted, cracks appeared in the propaganda. Loyal commentators and politicians began voicing real concerns on TV. They discussed the refinery attacks, the gasoline export ban, and falling oil prices. Even top officials like the energy minister admitted to production cuts and logistical struggles. The numbers told a worrying story. Declining revenues, rising costs. The shift in public discourse was striking. Economic problems were now too big to ignore. The Kremlin seemed to be preparing the public for harder times. By allowing some discussion, they managed expectations and avoided sudden panic. But the confident narrative was breaking down, replaced by anxiety about the future. The cracks in the facade were visible, and Russians were starting to notice. The myth of a sanctions-proof economy was unraveling. As international pressure mounted and the economic toll grew heavier, the Kremlin quietly dispatched trusted envoys to the United States, hoping to open a discreet back-channel for dialogue. These secretive meetings took place far from the public eye, signaling Moscow's growing anxiety about the situation. Officially, the talks were framed as discussions about strategic stability and global security, but beneath the surface, the true objective was clear. Russia was seeking relief from the crippling Western sanctions that were squeezing its economy and isolating it from the world. In these covert negotiations, Russia floated a bold proposal: freeze the ongoing conflict in Ukraine along the current front lines in exchange for a significant easing of sanctions. This was an attempt to halt the fighting without giving up any of the territory it had seized. But this wasn't a genuine peace offer. Instead, it was a calculated bid to legitimize the land Russia had taken and secure much-needed economic relief, all while keeping its military gains intact. The move revealed a sense of desperation within the Kremlin. Russia was now willing to trade the prospect of peace for some financial breathing room, hoping to stabilize its faltering economy. The United States and its allies, however, saw through the maneuver and firmly rejected the idea, refusing to reward aggression or legitimize territorial conquest. Western leaders made it clear: sanctions relief would only be possible after a full and verifiable Russian withdrawal from all Ukrainian territory, not before. The secret diplomatic mission ended in failure, leaving the Kremlin exposed, isolated, and empty-handed on the world stage. The economic squeeze on Russia only intensified, with no diplomatic breakthrough in sight and the country's financial woes deepening by the day. Russia's vulnerability and weakness were now on full display for the world to see, as its citizens faced growing hardship and uncertainty. The path to relief remained firmly blocked, and the crisis within Russia only deepened, casting a long shadow over the Kremlin's future. Today, the economic war against Russia grinds on. Putin still projects strength, but the facts tell a different story. Ukrainian drone attacks, new US sanctions, and falling oil prices have created a perfect storm. Sanctions haven't caused a sudden collapse, but they're steadily eroding Russia's economic foundations. Oil revenues are under severe strain. Russia is forced to sell at steep discounts and halt exports. State media and officials now openly discuss economic challenges once considered taboo. Secret diplomatic missions for sanctions relief show the Kremlin's desperation. The economic fortress is crumbling. The world is watching. Can Russia sustain the costs of war under mounting pressure? Will sanctions force a change, or will the Kremlin adapt and prolong the conflict? One thing is clear: Putin's story of a sanctions-proof economy is fiction. The real struggle is just beginning, and the outcome remains uncertain.